On August 13, 2018, a frantic friend called the police in Frederick, Colorado. She hadn't heard from Shanann Watts, who was 15 weeks pregnant, or her two young daughters Bella and Celeste. When officers arrived at the Watts home, they found Shanann's car in the garage and her personal belongings inside. But the house was eerily empty. Her husband, Chris Watts, arrived soon after. He seemed cooperative, even concerned, but there was something unsettling about his behavior. The next day, as the search for his missing family intensified, Chris gave a televised interview from his front porch. He looked directly into the camera and pleaded for their safe return. "Shanann, Bella, Celeste," he said, "if you're out there, just come back." He even managed a slight smile, a detail that would later send chills down everyone's spine. To the public, he was a worried husband and father, desperate for answers. But investigators were starting to see cracks in his story. His timeline of events didn't add up, and his calm demeanor felt unnatural for someone whose entire family had vanished without a trace. Just 2 days into the investigation, Chris's story began to completely unravel. He failed a polygraph test, a lie detector, and the pressure was mounting. He asked to speak with his father, and during that conversation he spun a new, horrific tale. He claimed that after he told Shanann he wanted a separation, she had tragically taken the lives of their daughters in a fit of rage, and that he, in his own blind rage, then took Shant's life. It was a shocking confession, designed to paint himself as a victim who had simply snapped under extreme circumstances. But this was just another lie in a web of deceit that was about to be fully exposed. The investigators didn't buy his story for a second. Why would a loving mother do such a thing? And why would Chris hide their bodies instead of immediately calling 911? The truth was far more sinister. Chris Watts had been living a double life. He was having an affair with a coworker and saw his family as an obstacle to his new desired freedom. He wasn't a victim. He was a cold, calculated predator who had meticulously planned to erase his family from his life so he could start over with someone new. Under further interrogation, Chris finally confessed to the real, unthinkable truth. He admitted to taking Shanann's life first, in their own bedroom. Then he put his two young daughters, who were still alive, in his truck with their mother's body and drove them to a remote oil field where he worked. There, he committed the final, unspeakable act, ending the lives of his little girls, Bella and Celeste, before hiding their bodies. He had single-handedly destroyed the family he once swore to protect, all for selfish desires. He pleaded guilty to avoid the death penalty and is now serving multiple life sentences in prison, leaving the world to grapple with the chilling question: how can a man who seemed so normal be capable of such unimaginable evil? The Chris Watts case serves as a terrifying reminder that monsters can hide in plain sight, sometimes behind the face of a smiling, friendly neighbor or even a loving family man. It forces us to confront the dark potential that can exist within human nature. Thanks for watching. If you're interested in more deep dives into complex cases like this, be sure to subscribe. It was a lie, and investigators knew it. Chris Watts was arrested that same night. August 15, 2018. He told officers where to find the bodies. On the evening of August 16th, investigators arrived at the Anadarko oil field. They found Shanann first, buried in a shallow grave, still wrapped in a sheet. Then the oil tanks. Bella and Celeste, 3 and 4 years old, were found submerged in crude oil inside separate tanks. The openings to those tanks were only 8 inches wide. 8 inches. Investigators believe he chose the oil tanks because the smell would mask what was inside. The coroner confirmed Shanann had been strangled. The girls had been smothered. Nico Lee Watts, 15 weeks along, died with his mother. On November 6, 2018, facing the death penalty, Chris Watts accepted a plea deal. He pleaded guilty to 3 counts of first-degree murder, unlawful termination of a pregnancy, 3 counts of tampering with a deceased human body. On November 19, 2018, Judge Marcelo Kopkow sentenced him to 5 life sentences without the possibility of parole, 3 to be served consecutively. The judge called it the most inhumane and vicious crime he had ever handled. During sentencing, Shanann's family spoke. Chris Watts kept his head down. He did not look at them. And in February 2019, in a 5-hour interview inside a maximum security prison in Wisconsin, Chris Watts finally told the full truth about what he had done to his children. He described the drive to the oil field. Bella and Celeste, alive, sitting in the truck. He told investigators what he did to each of them. And reportedly, during that interview, prosecutors revealed that Bella had fought back. A 4-year-old girl fought her own father. The question that everyone, investigators, psychologists, the public, has never been able to fully answer is, why? Why would a man destroy everything? Why murder your pregnant wife? Why kill your own children? Criminal behavioral analyst Laura Richards, who studied this case extensively, noted that Watts showed classic signs of what is sometimes called family annihilation, where a person eliminates their entire family rather than face the consequences of a broken life. He was backed into a corner of his own making. Affair exposed. Marriage crumbling. Finances already strained. A new baby coming. He didn't want to leave his family. He wanted to erase them, and so he smiled on camera. He called the realtor. He FaceTimed his girlfriend, because in his mind, the problem was solved. I want to ask you something, and I want you to respond in the comments. Do you think people like Chris Watts are born this way? Or does something break inside them? Because that question, that terrifying question, is one criminologists and psychologists are still debating today. Shanann Watts was 34 years old. She loved her daughters fiercely. She loved her husband unconditionally. She was going to be a mother of 3. Bella was 4. She liked to sing and dance. Celeste was 3. Her family called her Cease. Nico Lee Watts never took a single breath. They were failed by the one person who was supposed to protect them most. Chris Watts is currently serving his sentences at a maximum security prison in Waupun, Wisconsin. He will never be released. But for Shanann's family, her parents, her brother, there is no sentence that fills the silence those 3 left behind. Before I go, I want to know what you think. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. What part of this case disturbs you the most? Do you think we can ever truly understand the mind like Chris Watts? If this video moved you, please share it. Not for views, but because Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and Nico Lee deserve to be remembered. Hit the like button if you believe these stories matter. Subscribe to Dark Files if you want more truth, no matter how dark it gets. I'll see you in the next file. Just after 1:45 a.m. on August 13, 2018, a pregnant Shanann Watts was dropped off at her home in Frederick, Colorado. Her friend and co-worker, Nicole Atkinson, watched her walk through the front door. Inside, her 2 young daughters, Bella and Celeste, were asleep upstairs. Her husband, Chris, was waiting. It was the last time anyone outside that house would ever see her alive. Now, I want you to think about this. At that very moment, Shanann had no idea what was waiting for her inside that marriage. What would you do if you discovered the person you trusted most had been living a secret, double life? What happened next is based on Chris Watts' own eventual confession, given in a 5-hour prison interview. In the early hours of that morning, Chris woke Shanann up. He told her he wanted to talk about their marriage, about their future. An argument erupted. Shanann confronted him about the affair she suspected. According to Watts himself, he snapped. He strangled Shanann Watts to death in their own bedroom. She was 15 weeks pregnant. Their unborn son, Nico, died with her. But then something happened that is almost impossible to process. Their 4-year-old daughter, Bella, woke up. She came to the bedroom door, looked at her father, and asked, "What's wrong with mommy?" Watts then wrapped Shanann's body in a bedsheet and carried her downstairs. He loaded her into his work truck, and he drove, with both of his daughters still alive in the vehicle, toward the Anadarko oil field where he worked. An hour's drive. Imagine that. Bella and Celeste were alive in that truck, their mother's body on the floor beside them. At the oil field, Chris Watts smothered Celeste first. Then Bella, with his own bare hands. He then pushed their small bodies through an 8-inch hatch at the top of 2 separate, nearly full crude oil tanks. He buried Shanann in a shallow grave nearby. Then he drove back home. He made a phone call to his girlfriend. He called the girls' school to unenroll them. He called a real estate agent to discuss selling the family home, and then he waited. I need you to take a breath here, because what I just described is real. These were real children, a real mother, a real unborn baby. And the man who did this then stood in front of news cameras the very next day and smiled. On August 14th, the day after the murders, Nicole Atkinson grew worried. Shanann had missed a doctor's appointment. She wasn't answering texts or calls. That was not like Shanann. Atkinson went to the house and then called 911. Police arrived for a welfare check. Inside, they found Shanann's phone between the couch cushions, her keys, her purse, her wedding ring sitting on the bedside table. Her car was still in the garage, with the girls' car seats inside. It was clear, Shanann had not left willingly. Chris Watts told officers he'd last seen his wife at 5:15 a.m. When he left for work, claiming she mentioned a vague plan to visit a friend with the kids. Later that same afternoon, Chris Watts walked outside to speak with the Denver news crew. And this is where the case cracked wide open. He stood there, looked at the camera, and spoke about his missing pregnant wife and daughters. Investigators watching that interview, particularly CBI agent Tammy Lee, felt immediately that something was deeply wrong. He didn't cry. He spoke about them calmly, almost flatly, and used the past tense as if they were already gone. Agent Lee wanted him in an interrogation room immediately. Now, here's a question for you. We often say grief looks different for everyone. But is there a point where someone's reaction tells you everything you need to know? Investigators thought so. The next morning, August 15th, Chris Watts arrived at the police station with his father for a polygraph test. He failed. Inside the interrogation room, investigators played their final card. They showed Watts a video from a neighbor's security camera. It showed him loading items into his truck hours after Shanann had returned home. The timestamp proved she never left the house. He was caught. Shortly after, in an emotional conversation with his father, Watts confessed to killing Shanann. But he told a monstrous lie about his daughters. He claimed that Shanann had killed the children, that he had found them dead, lost control, and strangled her in a fit of rage. This was the first of his many confessions, each one revealing a new layer of his depravity. Thank you for watching. Please consider subscribing for more deep dives into complex cases.